Good evening, everyone. My name is Grant DeCosta. I'm the Director of Community Services for the Brandywine Conservancy. Happy to be here tonight representing the Brandywine Flood Study, which is a partnership co-led by Chester County Water Resources Authority and University of Delaware Water Resources Center. Important having that bi-state collaboration, recognizing that the full watershed is a bi-state watershed and we need to work across state lines, which southeastern Pennsylvania and northern Delaware have done for many, many years successfully. And so we think we are going to be successful in this regard too. So as I mentioned, our study is for the full watershed. I know obviously I'm speaking here and your concerns are primarily for where it's impacting you. And that's important. And we are hearing that up and down the watershed, everybody's incidents and experiences with flooding are what we are trying to work towards solving. So as you see there, the goals of the flood study, obviously reduce flooding in the Brandywine. And that's important to note. We are not just looking to produce a study and file a report. The organizations involved have a history of action, and we intend to act in this regard as well. You see noted with coordination with the Delaware efforts, we are not the only activity going on here. As much as we all suffered, the city of Wilmington did as well. So we're making sure that we are being upstream good neighbors and helping them downstream as well. I mentioned that we want to work towards implementable projects. As soon as the study is going, we intend to get to work, and that's when the real hard work begins, but we're ready for it. And then lastly, the idea of model flood mitigation strategies, working at the scale we are. We also recognize that flooding is happening east of the Brandywine, west of the Brandywine. And so there are other communities similarly suffering. And we feel that the work we're doing, the strategies that are going to be recommended, the mitigation solutions are going to be transferable amongst watersheds. And that was an important note because as you see, in addition to Chester County, who was one of our first funders, stepped up in a strong way, allowed us to get going, of course, FEMA funding, but also Delaware County. Delaware County only has one municipality in the Brandywine, but they know how important this work is to help all the communities that are suffering throughout this region. So it was great for them to step up. In addition to the Brandywine Conservancy and our co-leads, we also have engaged Westchester University and Stroud Water Research Center. We have two other firms that specialize in ecology and as well navigating the regulatory process as we begin to identify solutions. So that's Biohabitats and Meliora. And then there are two other sub-consultants involved, engineering firms who have regular ongoing contracts with the Water Resources Authority. So their knowledge and experience was important to bring in as we look at our opportunities. But that's not all. We also convened a flood advisory committee so that we can tap into the expertise of other professionals working in this arena. Notably also, there are some that were not allowed to participate in the flood study, such as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They do flood studies, and they could have done one for us, but it would have been a much longer time span in years, and it would have been out of local control. And we felt, knowing the experience that we all have here, we can do this ourselves, bring together the partners, but by having this advisory committee, it allowed them to participate. They are vetting the methodologies we're using. They will have a behind-the-curtain look at all of the science that we're using for this so that when this is done, we can go to them for the funding, and they can say, yes, we were part of this. We understand what was done here because we're going to need their funding as well. And in some cases, they may be leading certain of the mitigation projects that are recommended by the study. The advisory committee meeting has been meeting roughly every 6 weeks, and that's open to anyone. We have a lot of municipalities attending as well. So we encourage others who would like to be a part of that to come along. Timeline, we are looking to do this in 1 year, so we'll be wrapping up later this summer. We designed this partly around an academic calendar because we were using a lot of students, and I don't discredit the input of the students. When we're talking about like University of Delaware, these are master's engineering students that are working on master's level engineering work, and once they graduate, we're going to be looking to potentially hire them to help us solve this, potentially career-long activities here that they will have. So where are we at in this? One of the key first things that we needed to do was get our modeling down. We are using several different types of models there, but really what's unique about the way we've taken this modeling approach, in the first map image on the left there is the watershed, and it's a little tough to see at this scale, but we broke the entire watershed into 17 sub-basins. So we are then calibrating a model for every sub-basin so that when we get to the bottom, we don't have a margin of error that's now exponentially greater. Working at that sub-basin, in addition to having calibrated, when we start looking at solutions, when we start modeling future flood events, we can do it at the sub-basin level. When we look at future population growth, we can determine the impacts of that at a sub-basin level. So it will have local opportunities. Further, at the scale we're doing it, we can't model every watershed, and there are some that need further investigation at a finer scale. We don't want to be part of a study that recommends further studies, but that's where we're at, and that's how extreme some of these localized events are. So we've now completed our modeling. We're looking at land use, as I mentioned, all these types of things that went into it that we can calibrate, and then looking at the outputs, we'll then go into the storm scenarios. Also important to note, we're coordinating with other studies. I mentioned Delaware, but that's not the only one. Right there in yellow is Coatesville as well. On the other branch is doing their own underground flood study. They suffer very similar consequences and geographic locations as Downingtown. So they have one that they're doing just for some underground infrastructure issues they have. But what's great about this is most of these studies are actually funded by FEMA. Unfortunately, they didn't tell us all that they were funding the others, but through the relationships and collaborations we've all been doing, we made that connection ourselves. So we're looking across at the other studies and saying, what are you doing down in Wilmington? They're doing some modeling down there. So we don't need a focus there, and we can divert more resources upstream. So we're getting a scale of efficiency here due to these great relationships working in this area that we've had for many years. Moving on, now that the modeling is done, we are building in our scenarios so that we can get to the solution identification phase. So we're looking at existing infrastructure. Most common that we're hearing is that a lot of it needs to be right-sized, whether it was not right-sized originally or due to precipitation changes, due to increased development upslope of those. That's a common refrain that we hear, that right infrastructure needs to be right-sized. Can we also retrofit some of that? Increase the infiltration abilities. That's one of those key things that will be most helpful for Downingtown. We're also looking at non-structural solutions. This is going to be making recommendations for regulatory changes. One of the most common could be stormwater ordinances and perhaps incentivizations through that so that we can infiltrate further, as well as we know open space preservation. So reducing future development in areas that are going to increase flooding. It's not a universal landscape that we look across where we see all development is equal in its impacts. So making sure that we are looking at those options as well. And Chester County has this great history of open space preservation. And when they look at the models already, they know that the flooding of Ida would have been much worse had it not been for all that preservation. Another big element we're doing as part of this, to once again, we are trying to learn everything we can so that we are developing solutions that are going to work, is reaching out to the municipality. So we've been meeting with every single municipality in the watershed, talking to them about their flooding, talking to their staff, talking to Public Works if they have it, talking to their engineers. We're also going through and reviewing their hazard mitigation plan with them. You heard Commissioner Maxwell mention that, and the county is getting ready to do an update. And oh, by the way, we're feeding all of our results to the county so they can get a head start on that. And once again, not have a duplication of effort. But looking at those hazard mitigation plans, what's the status of the projects that are outlined in them, making sure that they are prepared to start thinking about projects that can go into that. Because if you have projects in the hazard mitigation plan, you have access to special funding that's earmarked for hazard mitigation plans. And then the public engagement, another reason why I'm here tonight. You'll see up on there on the slides, list of a lot of the public meetings we've done. Downingtown was the first public meeting we had back in December. We were able to come out and meet a lot of you and start learning early on where things were at. And it also was very helpful informing how we were going to engage other public meetings to learn from the public. So we're just about completed on those. Our next public meetings at this phase of the project will be down in Delaware. We have 2 meetings coming up, one here in April, one further in May. We're also talking anywhere else we can. So whether it's tonight, other forums you see, I've been going around talking as much as we can, trying to get engagement on that. And I'll get to engagement in ways you can help us tonight. But then stay tuned, because then as we start getting towards solutions and drafting our recommendations. We're going to have another round of public meetings. We are trying to get out as much as we can and talk to everybody. You know your concerns and your needs and how it's impacting you better than we ever will. So please tell us what we need to know. Ways you can do that: go to the flood study website. On there, we have an FAQ about our study. We have a public survey. There is also out on the front table a flyer that has a QR code. Whether you take the flyer or just scan your phone and go into that now, please take that flood survey so that you can tell us what we need to know. There's also the flood mapping tool that Commissioner Maxwell also mentioned. There's a screenshot of it right there. It's smartphone friendly. You can also do it on any other PC. Go in there, you can drop a point, you can just look up your address and it will automatically zoom to that to help you do it. There's some easy fields to fill out. That's important information for us as well. And what we've designed in this, it will outlive the flood study. So once again, we can keep learning from you all. And once the report or the study moves into the implementation phase on ongoing problems, go to the website if you would like to learn more and hear some of the presentations and Q&A from other public meetings. We've been recording them and they're online available. If any of you are township officials, members of HOAs, we also have a communications toolkit with everything prepared so you have an article ready to go for your newsletter. It includes links to all these resources. So once again, we can get as many people participating as possible. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on, all this work that, we're going to be recommend doing is not a new type of work for us. Just by example, we have been working up in Honeybrook for many, many years now, dating back to the mid-90s, on preserving farmland, which helps with flood mitigation, on installing practices that also mitigate flooding, infiltrating further stormwater, reforesting the stream corridors. The Amish have been great partners up there. On Amish farms alone, we've implemented over 27 acres of riparian forest buffer. So, that's taking land out of production. They've been great partners. You see who's participating in there. The county's been on that, the conservation district, as well as some of our federal partners and other conservation partners that are part of our study and just part of our ongoing work. And we're also working with them on their stormwater. Once again, we're trying to, just as we're doing in our flood study, hit every opportunity we can. But I just want to stress again, we're not behind the curve on this, but we have a long way to go, we recognize. So with that, I understand questions at the end, and I will stick around as well until they're all answered. But I thank you for your time.